Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. Hosted by me, Dr. Sharon Cradle and Sherelle Higgins. We will be discussing intriguing, intricate, inspirational, informative, and intelligent topics with our individual twists and talents.
We will present real stories, real solutions, and engage in real talk.
So we invite you to be our company every Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock p.m. as we focus on transcendent thinking that will move you forward. You become the company you keep.
What company do you keep? Oh yeah, we are biological sisters by way of the south side of Chicago. So get ready to keep company with us and our guests as we talk about it.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Sisters in Company Talking About It live show. This is the day that the Lord has made, and I truly rejoice in it. And I'm so excited that you all have decided to join us today. And as always, I highly recommend that our Facebook Live and social media followers please log into listenvisionlive.com so that you can see the show in its entirety. And I want you to know that this beautiful lady that's sitting here today, Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, she didn't come to be a co-host, but she came to be a guest, and so she didn't realize that Sherelle wasn't going to be here today. And I would like to start with that. Let me give you my scripture first. The scripture is, "For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him." And the reason I started with that, and I'm going to tie it into my Black History fact. I have a Black History fact. We all know that February is Black History Month, but Black History is every day that we are in the United States of America. And so I want to talk about a model of unconditional love. And that person was Willie Williams, my granddaddy. Most of you that follow me on social media knows that that was my love bug. He was born July 9th, 1920, and died today, February 3rd, 2019. He was the only person I've ever known to model unconditional love. He was courageous, smart, funny. He was our patriarch. He was tall. He was strong. He was a provider. He was an encourager, and he was a storyteller. You have no idea the stories my grandfather used to tell us. He was from Mississippi, and you just think about being in 1920, migrating to Chicago in the 20s as a young boy with, I believe, a 3rd or 8th grade education. He was a twin. I think he had about 14 siblings. He never wanted to live to be 100. That's all he talked about, because he knew that people before him, the people that were important to him, would be gone. And so he lived his life, right? And he never wanted to be 100. So he was 98 and he got his prayer. All of the most significant moments in my life, my love bug was there. You know, he drove me to Virginia in 1981 to attend Virginia State University. I had never been on the East Coast, and we drove 18 hours. Now we know a shorter route. We drove 18 hours. He would talk with me for hours. He provided my mom with a house for us to live in on the south side of Chicago. I was 17 when he drove me here. He was at all my graduations, and he stood in proxy during my first marriage and walked me down the aisle when my father could not be there. So this guy, you have no idea, people that experienced death before, you understand, it just feels like a piece of you is just missing. Absolutely. And he was still in his right mind. So only thing I want to say is just thank everyone for the text messages and the calls, and rest in heaven, Granddaddy, with my Nana, and tell her we love her and we'll see you all one day. So that was the Black History fact. And there was so much more that I could talk about this man, but I don't want to spend all that time since we have our beautiful guest here. And so we do have Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, and I'm just going to tell you all something. I have been following Dr. Avis on social media for a while, and if you don't know that this lady is bad to the bone, you better ask somebody. She is a Virginia State Trojan. Trojans in the house.
That's right.
That's exactly right. And you know how we love Virginia State.
Absolutely.
And so it is just such an honor and a pleasure to have her here. And I was telling Avis when I talk with her that it's just a small world. She went to a high school called Bluestone.
Yep.
High school. And I was like, oh, wow. And people are like, well, how do you know Bluestone? And I just told her my history about being a cheerleader sponsor and a teacher at Matorka High School back from 86 to 93. And so because Matorka High School in Chesterfield County, Virginia was the only AA high school in the county, we had to travel outside of the county to other AA high schools, and Bluestone just happened to be one of them. And so I remember going to Bluestone. I just remember, like, where am I going?
Yeah. I know why you would think that.
But we went a couple of times, and the people were gracious. They were kind, and we always had a battle royale, as they say in sports down there. And so let's welcome Avis to the show. You know, if you want to call in, you can call in at 833-202-8255. And I'm going to let Avis introduce herself, and then, of course, I'll fill in the gap. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Trojan sister.
Yes, exactly. And she's a member of AKA.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
So happy to be here.
Thank you.
As was said, my name is Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver. I am an international speaker, an award-winning author. I am also a media commentator and the founder of an event called the Master of the Media Summit, where I do media training.
Yes.
And so I do a lot of work in this throughout the nation and around the world, really about lifting up the Black community, and particularly with a focus on Black women.
Exactly, and it just is perfect for my topics that I like to talk about, and as well as my conference. And when I read her bio, it's so impressive. It's so much. You just have to go out on LinkedIn and just kind of check her out, Google her and check her out. But you were the youngest executive director of the National Council of Negro Women.
Yes.
How did you find yourself in that role? That's
Yeah.
such a prominent role.
Well, thank you. So a lot of my professional background in Washington, D.C. was based in the think tank world.
Yes.
So I started out doing research actually with places like the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, with like the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. From there, I went to the Institute for Women's Policy Research, and
Yes.
I directed their work on social justice and poverty programs. And from there, I ended up transitioning over to NCNW, actually to start a think tank there that focused on Black women.
Okay.
So I did that there for a few years, and unfortunately, after the passing
Yes.
of Dr. Height,
Height, yes.
they needed new executive leadership with the organization, and I was given the opportunity to be the executive director.
Yes.
So that's how I got there.
That is amazing. And just thank you for all that you do to uplift our community and women. And so you all are going to find out in a minute why I invited her here. But before we go on, I am wearing red today because it is American Heart Month, right? And so we know that red signifies the heart. And what I'm going to challenge you to do, and many of you know that I love to work out. You know, on my birthday, I had a party at the kickboxing place. And so
you keep it real.
Exactly. Trying to do one thing every day that I can, and to be consistent, and to take better care of my health. And so we're going to challenge everyone that's listening to our voices. Do something to take care of your health.
True.
Whatever it is, walk, drink more water, particularly get more sleep,
Yes.
watch our diets, just change your mindset, right? Because, you know, I'm a guru about, you know, what starts in the mind happens in our body.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, I'm going to ask you to journal what you're doing, you know, to change your lifestyle so that you can be around for your loved ones and for yourself. And so you all know I have a journal. You know, you can get my journal or anybody else's journal, but write things down, because I know that writing is healing, and it gives you a connection with yourself and a higher power. And so, you know, just do something for Heart Healthy Month.
Absolutely.
And so why did I invite Avis on the show?
I don't know. Why did you invite me?
I invited Avis because Avis has been doing a lot of Facebook Lives lately, and I know that you have been a regular host for the Roland Martin show, right? And I know you co-hosted for him the other day on Roland Martin Unfiltered on, I think it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
And on Facebook. But one of the things that we wanted to talk about is this whole conversation about politics,
Yeah.
right? And I really want to focus in on Kamala Harris, particularly. And the reason I would like to talk about that is because she is the second black woman to run for president of the United States. And there's been so much pushback that it has disturbed me, to be very honest with you. And so I've been doing a lot of research on her, but and I'm not talking about pushback from a political standpoint. I'm just talking about pushback from our people, right? And the things that people are saying. And I'm just a little concerned, right, about, why are we there? It's no longer about, the individual. It's about parties, but they're going after her individually.
Yeah.
So what's your take on what's happening with Kamala?
Right. Well, it's a couple of things that's happening with Kamala. Number one is the reality is that we as a constituency are an extremely important voting bloc for the Democratic Party.
Exactly.
We are the key
Yes.
voting bloc for the Democratic Party, and particularly black women are the key voting bloc for the Democratic Party. And not only should we know that, the reality is that other people know that as well, particularly those who are not interested in advancing things for our interests.
Right.
So when I say that, I'm specifically referring to, for example, last presidential election in 2016, we know that there was a lot of Russian interference.
Right.
And part of that showed up as what's called bots, basically these social media entities that aren't really black people, but they pretend that they're black people.
Yes, exactly.
And they spread a lot of damaging information that is meant to either discourage the black vote or to get them to vote for individuals that really don't have a snowball's chance and where of winning.
Exactly.
Okay? A lot of those bots have resurfaced right now, and they seem to be particularly targeting Kamala Harris. And I will tell you why they are targeting her. They are targeting her because as it stands right now, she's the most viable candidate in the field. It's already announced.
Yes.
There have been some polling, for example, of Iowa caucus members, the very first major primary that we will see. And right now, she's polling second only to Joe Biden, and he hadn't even announced yet, right?
Okay.
And so,
That's powerful.
Exactly. So, because of that, I believe that she's a threat.
Yes.
She's a threat.
Yes.
And so we're seeing people who are circulating a lot of carefully edited videos that are interpreting them in a very negative way and not really telling the full story of what she's saying.
Right.
We're talking about also people who are cherry picking her record. And first of all, let's just make note of one thing. She has a damn record. And the reason why she has a record, I'm sorry, I know. This is
No,
a
do
religious
you?
show.
That's why I wanted you here. Do you?
So let me try not to curse.
No, do you?
Okay.
That's why I wanted you here. We speak the truth on this show.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It's very easy to run for something when you don't have a record.
That's right. Exactly.
Because when you don't have a record, the only thing that people have to go on is what you say. And you can say anything.
Right.
Regardless of how realistic it is or not. You can
Right.
just say anything. You can promise people the moon. But she has an actual record, right? Obviously, a record is going to include things that people agree with and
they
things
don't
that
agree
people
with.
that don't agree with
Yes.
agree with. But what's going on right now in the targeting of her they are only sort of pulling out things and contextualizing things in a way that would play on those issues that people will not agree with, particularly within the black community.
Yes.
So basically, it's a targeted hit.
Yes.
I would argue that they have leveled against her, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to work.
Right, and that's one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about it, because first of all, I believe that we need to do our own research.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we don't need to just pick up on these talking points. We need to understand how powerful our vote is, particularly black women.
Yes.
And we know that in the House, we have over 100 women. I think there are like 57
Absolutely.
African Americans, if I'm not
Record
mistaken.
number.
Record numbers. And so we know that we are rising to power. And like Avis said, it is just not that we know it. they know it
They
too.
know it too.
And so
Absolutely.
they're going to do everything in their power, because it's about power for a lot of folks, for the other side. It's about
Absolutely.
power. And so we want to make sure that we do our homework and just not come out and just say that we're not going to vote for someone when we haven't even done our homework.
I know.
And even if she particularly has done something that you don't particularly agree with, which was maybe 20 years ago,
Right.
where she stands on the issue right now.
Absolutely.
That is, to me, is a very important question to ask people. And so, the other thing that I've heard is that because she's married to a white man, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, what does that have to do with the cup of tea in China? But for a lot of black men. Some black men, they are very concerned
Well,
about
why don't we
that.
ask them about their history, about who they've been with?
Exactly.
How about that?
Exactly. Yes. How many? That's right. Exactly.
So every time I hear one of those, I'm just
Yes.
like, yeah, let's go through your Rolodex, bruh.
Yeah.
Okay. I doubt
Exactly.
seriously that it's only filled with black women. Let's just keep it real.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So it's absolutely irrelevant and ridiculous.
It's
Absolutely.
just irrelevant. And so when I look at her, why did my video end?
Oh no.
Well, anyway, I may have to come back. Go on listenvisionlive.com.
Yes.
And so, but when I look
what's
at her record and what her agenda is, she really wants to focus on a couple things, and I think that's rightfully so. In terms of when she goes out and she's campaigning,
Right.
She wants to do a $3 trillion tax plan and give tax credits for renters.
Yes.
She wants to initiate bail reform and Medicaid for all.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to look at where she's trying to take us
Right.
and really get a better understanding of what she's trying to do.
Absolutely. And I just want to dig into that her tax plan for just a second, because that's a particularly important one. What's happened with this particular administration in terms of the tax bill that was passed here was it was a bill that was passed that really helped just a very, 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 very top.
Right. 1%.
Probably less than 1%.
Yeah, they say 1%.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And then, so everyone else was left out of the loop, right? We have nothing to show for it. And as a result, we've seen the deficit has now skyrocketed. You have Mitch McConnell here threatening Social Security, threatening Medicare, threatening Medicaid,
Right.
to rob from those programs, to basically steal from the poor to give to the rich. Let's
Right.
just break it down, what's happened with that tax plan.
Right.
So what she's looking to do with her tax plan is to correct that situation, provide tax credits that would actually give more money to more people
Right.
at the lower and middle income level,
right.
to basically reduce poverty and put more money in the pockets of working people. And that's exactly what we need right now.
Exactly. And if you don't know this, there was a direct attack on the middle class.
Absolutely.
Right, in this last election and
Absolutely.
things that are happening now. So we have to be very, very sure and confident about what it is what we know, what we don't know, and what we think is going to be the greater good for all in our community.
Absolutely.
And that's it. And so the other thing that I want you to talk about, because I was just blown away by people saying that she wasn't black enough. And I'm just floored.
grinds my gears.
And so when I heard you talk about that the other night, it just
Yeah.
really brought some perspective. So do you mind sharing a little bit about your perspective on, why they're saying she's not black enough, and just educate some folks?
Absolutely. So it's really a pet peeve of mine when people talk about that in a way that's really completely wrong. I mean, it's just no other way to put it. Clearly, first of all, she is a biracial woman.
Right.
Her mother is Indian.
Right.
Her father, from India. Okay. Her father is from Jamaica. All right. Now, people who are attacking her blackness, they take that combination and they say, "Oh, well, she's not black." I mean, she's as black, if you ask me, as President
Exactly.
Obama was, whose father
Exactly.
was Kenyan and his mother was white. Here's the reality. As African Americans, we need to understand that obviously there is a conversation that one can have about, is she African American,
right.
or is she black?
Exactly.
I would agree with the fact that I would not necessarily call her African American, because in my definition, and people define this differently,
Right.
but from my definition, I think of that as someone who has descended from the American slave experience. That's how I define African American. But there are black people in Jamaica. Okay?
Exactly.
And all of us got here, whether or not it was in this country in America, in Jamaica, throughout
Right.
the Caribbean,
The Caribbeans, yes.
and South America. There are millions of African people who were kidnapped during the transatlantic slave trade and deposited in different parts of this side of the world. So we all come from the same people.
Yes.
Typically Western
Africa.
Africans. Okay.
Yep.
It was just a matter of happenstance where your ancestors got dropped off.
Yes.
But so because her father's ancestors were dropped off in Jamaica and our ancestors were dropped off here, let me tell you, we're one people.
Right.
We derived from the same homeland.
Yes.
She is black.
Yes. But you know what's so interesting
the
about
foolishness.
that? When Cory Booker announced,
Yeah.
no one is saying he's not black enough.
Right. Well, yeah.
You know?
Nope.
And so that's just, to me, another way that they're trying to destroy this woman
Yeah.
for whatever reason. And what I do believe is that she's in the race for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to give her some serious consideration. I'm going to do
Absolutely.
my research on all the candidates. And, you know, and when I think about the candidates, I'm thinking, okay, we have, you know, how many people now? 10?
Yeah, it's up to, I think last I counted, I think it's up to 9.
To 9.
Yeah.
And so what is going to be the strategy?
Right.
It can't be that you just leave it to the voters to kind of make this decision, because now the black vote particularly, could be split, and it
Yeah.
will be split.
Yeah.
So what is going to be the Democratic strategy?
Yeah, now this is going to be very interesting because what I'm interested in with this particular field, it is the most diverse field of
Yes.
candidates that we've ever experienced at the presidential level. You know, you have now, I think maybe, 4 women? who
4
are
women,
running?
yes.
You have two black people that are running.
Right.
You have, it's a very, very diverse group of folks, and not everybody that we expect to run has announced yet. So it'll probably
Right.
be even bigger field. What this is going to mean for us, for example, our voting block, is you're right. It is going to be a split, because I would argue that I wouldn't be surprised if Eric Holder doesn't jump into
Right.
this
I was going to
race
ask you about that.
at some
exactly.
point. Okay,
Mhm.
so the plot
Right.
will thicken.
Right.
Okay, the good thing is that we're spoiled with riches. We have
We are.
choices.
Yes.
And I quite frankly believe it's too early for anybody to discount anyone,
decision.
because you haven't even listened. You don't
Right.
even know yet.
Yes.
They haven't even rolled out yet
Yeah.
fully
Yeah.
all of their policy platforms and planks for you to even make an educated choice as to who you
Right.
want to support yet.
Exactly.
So rather than seeking to tear people down the minute they announce, which I think is part of that, I really do believe are these Russian bots that are just circulating things. And unfortunately, many of us are just
Taking it.
retweeting it,
Yes.
or posting it. We have no clue where the origin of that information is, how valid it
Yes,
is.
exactly.
We're just sending it out there. And so unfortunately it is taken whole. But the reality is we need to be more strategic and more politically savvy than that as
Exactly.
a people.
And that is because we need to read and do
Yeah.
some research, and it takes time. And so I was telling Dr. Avis, my sister, Sherelle is not here, but she would be laughing because you see I have all my papers, right?
I remember that song, She Got Papers.
That's right. And so I have all my papers, because we have to read for ourselves and
Yeah.
interpret for ourselves and really think about what is important to us, right? And so, some people will say, well, there's a black man running and they're not going to let another black man. You don't know.
Exactly.
You don't
oh my
know.
God.
Right.
If I hear
Don't
one
fall
more
for
person-
it.
Exactly. One more, because a lot of people, and I can understand this feeling. Now, a lot of people say, well, I just want 45 out. And
Right.
So, and I just, believe me, I'm the same way. I want them out too. Okay.
Yes.
But when they think like that, they think, well, the most viable candidate to them would be a white man, right? So they're
That's what they
automatically
say.
discounting. Listen, I just don't believe that. And I
Right.
don't believe that for a couple of reasons. I mean, historically speaking, when there have been great, when institutions or organizations have fallen upon really, really bad times, that's typically when new leadership comes in that's completely different from the previous
That's
leadership.
correct.
Okay, we see that in the corporate
Yes.
world. We
Yes,
also
we do.
saw that here
Yes,
in
it
our,
was very
in our
extreme,
government.
though.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you right now, the main reason why this country was ready to vote for a black man in the first place is because Bush jacked
Right.
it up so
That's
darn
right.
much.
Exactly.
So at this particular moment where we have this unmitigated disaster in the White House,
Yes.
I think this will probably be one of the best times times to get someone in there that's completely different
Yes.
than the white male
Right.
sort of.
Well, I don't know how
standard.
you feel about this because I teach leadership. I am a leader. I've been trained as a leader. And one of the things I believe that needs to happen is that we need to have a serious conversation about the U.S. Constitution.
Oh, yes.
And some amendments because, to be the president of the United States, you have to be 35 and
Yeah.
a United States citizen.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yeah, for real. We need more qualifications.
Oh, no doubt. and I'll be willing to draft some recommendations.
Let me just say, that's a very good point.
I'm just saying.
'Cause I have to say, with this administration, after that as the president, after who we had and still have as the attorney general, after all, Betsy DeVos, after all these unqualified people throughout this administration,
Yes.
I don't want to hear anybody say any
Exactly.
darn thing to me ever again in life about qualifications or
Exactly.
affirmative action.
Exactly.
Because this is the biggest example of affirmative action I've ever seen
Yes.
in terms of their
Their-
particular
privilege.
perception of it.
Yeah,
It's-
exactly.
It's white privilege.
Exactly. And so I believe that, and I'm not going to give you all my ideas because I don't want anybody to steal it, but I would be willing to write a job description
I love it.
for the president of the United States because I just believe that position, that office has been diminished.
Absolutely.
And so people are saying, well, anybody can run. Well, now we know that you need a little bit more than just anybody can run.
Oh my God. For real.
Yes.
It's an international embarrassment in all seriousness.
No, we know.
An
Exactly.
international
And it is embarrassing. And so I have a question on Facebook. It says, what are your thoughts on the owner of Starbucks considering
Oh,
running?
Jesus. Howard Schultz.
Yes. You all may call in at 833-202-8255.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, he could be a spoiler, unfortunately.
'Cause he would run as an
He wants to
independent.
run as an independent. And so we've seen in past elections, if you saw what happened, for example, with Ralph Nader, he's the reason why we got Bush in the first darn place.
Yes.
He got like 900,000 votes in Florida. And really, the Democrat, Gore only lost that supposedly. I still
Supposedly.
don't believe he lost that state.
Right.
But supposedly only lost that state by 500 votes. So you can have something like that happen with a third-party candidate.
Yes.
And I think that he creates that danger. I also will say that when I've seen in interviews with him, the only thing he seems to be passionate about is saving his money, saving taxes. So it seems like to me he has an agenda of maintaining this tax cut that Trump put in office.
Okay.
So don't just automatically assume that he's this, very sober independent that wants to bring the parties together. And he wants to keep that darn tax cut.
Exactly.
Don't believe the hype.
And let me tell you something. I try to look at things from a very simplistic standpoint in terms of there's a pathology going on in this country right now.
Yeah.
And for the poor, particularly the white poor, it seems to be ingrained in who they are. They seem to think, from what I understand in my research, that if you're rich, then, we need to have them in office.
Yeah.
But not necessarily thinking about it from the standpoint of how is it benefiting me.
Right.
And we know some states, I'm not going to even call them out. They've been poor, they're uneducated.
Well.
And so,
Yeah.
and they keep voting, it seems to me,
Yeah.
against their own interests.
That is a very. Are you sure you're not a political scientist?
No.
That was a very accurate observation. Absolutely. So here's what I think is what's going on there. And you're exactly right. And I think it's very interesting because oftentimes you will hear a Republican trope around black people aren't voting for and black people are being taken for granted.
Right.
They're voting against their own interests. Listen, black people are the most practical
Yes,
voters on the
we
freaking
are.
planet.
Yes.
You want to talk about people
Yes.
who are not practical voters, who are not voting in their own interest? You need to look at those people you're
Exactly.
talking about.
Exactly.
These poor white folk who are struggling, who are huge, who are the majority of people on food stamps,
Yes, they
on
are.
welfare,
Yes.
on Medicaid.
Yes.
They're the majority of people on these poverty programs. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what those programs are there for.
Social
But they're
programs.
voting against their own interests when they're voting people in office that will do everything they can to
take
slash
away.
those programs.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
what's going on in my theory? I wish I was a psychologist because I think that's or some psychiatrist, something to figure this out. But I think what's going on there is that they are really not voting in favor of their economic interests, but they are voting in favor of their racial interests.
That's right. Exactly. I like
They
that.
are looking
Yes.
to preserve white privilege in
Yes.
America, and even if they don't have the financial wherewithal at this
Right.
moment, they have this sort of pathological feeling that
Yes.
I'm better than,
Right.
and so they will.
I'm the
relate to
poorest,
this
but I'm
person.
better than any black
Absolutely,
person.
particularly
Yes.
if that candidate spews a lot of racist rhetoric in their campaigning style, like this person. That will attract their votes, even if it means slitting their own necks in terms of their economic interests.
Yes, and so that's what I see, and I love Ian Levon Zant when she talks about call a thing a thing.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
need to learn to call a thing a thing, and when I'm talking to people, they're like, "There's no racism." I'm like, "But that's
Oh,
the fabric
Jesus.
of who we are. What do you mean?"
Exactly.
And what I do know, because I have a counseling background, is I do know that nothing can improve until you heal, until you make some admissions,
Yes.
right,
Yeah.
about some stuff.
Yeah.
And we're in this country and we walk around every day as if we don't know how this country started, how
Absolutely.
it was built on the backs of our ancestors. And
Yep.
so I think if we start there,
That's such a good point.
if we start there, not just us as black people, I'm talking about white people too, because it's the
Absolutely.
truth. And white people cannot continue to say, well, it wasn't my ancestors. Well, whose
Excuse me?
ancestors were
Did you just pop out of thin air?
Exactly. And so to me, it's a deeper kind of conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come back to this, but I really now want to just slide over. And I know you and I didn't talk about this.
That's okay.
But the governor of Virginia.
Oh, Jesus Christ Almighty.
Yes. Yes. You better call on Jesus. It is.
Woo, Lord.
So,
have mercy. What was he thinking?
yeah. And so you can't tell me that racism, and again, the counselor in me, how I think about things, I'm like, why do you even want to dress up as a black person?
Oh my
Who
God.
does that? What is that about? Who, are you dressing up as a white person to try to make fun of us? But help me.
I don't
Help
understand
me.
it. So,
I
we
can't.
both went to Virginia State.
We did.
HBCU backgrounds.
Exactly.
Never in my entire
Yes.
4 years
Put on some white face.
had no desire
None.
to somehow dress
What
up
is
as white
that?
people. I just, and you know what? Did not desire, did
No.
not miss it, it was not
Exactly.
definitely won't aspirational. I don't understand it. But that particular situation.
Yes.
He needs to go, number one. He does need to resign. And if he doesn't resign, he needs to be impeached.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He has compromised his ability to lead. And I don't care that it was 30 years ago. The reality is that 1984 wasn't that long ago.
No. Yeah, because I was.
It
at
was
Virginia
not
State.
that. I was at
I was at
Virginia
Virginia
State
State.
in the late 80s.
Yeah.
I was there from 86 to 90. Let me tell you, when I was at Virginia State,
Yep.
you had, and this, I don't know if this happened when you were there,
yeah.
but they had
Yeah.
the Klan actually
To
march
march in
right
Colonial
in front,
Heights.
exactly,
Yes.
right by our university.
Yes, they did.
And like I said, once again, clearly not to intimidate us, because who's going to get intimidated by those idiots? But I think the motivation was to try to goat us
Yes.
into doing something so that we would get in trouble, because
Yes.
you know how that works,
Yes.
right? So, I bring that up because people are focusing on the blackface, which is bad enough. But I want to also
yes.
focus on the Klan
Yes.
image in that picture.
Exactly.
Which I don't believe was a costume. Okay, let's just keep it all the way 100. Okay? That was a very accurate looking costume. If it was a costume.
Exactly.
But I don't think it was a
Yes.
costume. And I also, so when I saw that in particular, I also think that we don't face, as a nation, particularly white people, don't face the reality that was a domestic, and still is a domestic terrorist organization.
That's correct.
It was an organization that murdered black people with impunity
Yes, they did.
for years, for damn near a century.
And
Okay,
hangings are still
terrorized
happening.
our communities.
Yes, they did.
And it's probably one of the reasons why your grandfather had to leave Mississippi
Mississippi.
to come to Chicago to escape the terrorism of an organization like
Yes,
that.
exactly.
So when we sort of dismiss the fact that there is a Klan person in that picture,
Right.
and I don't believe for one damn second it's just a freaking costume.
No.
Okay, and he's sitting up and he's 25 years old.
Yes, a grown
it's not
man
like he's 12.
made a decision.
Absolutely. He's in medical school, so
Right.
he was making decisions as a pediatrician about how some black
Yes.
child was going to be treated.
Yes, exactly.
No. He's got to go.
Yeah. And so let me just ask you this, because, every time, somebody does something, they got to go, right? So what is the thing? And we have to decide, because I believe that 45 shouldn't have been in office.
Yeah.
He needs to go.
Absolutely. He
Right?
does.
But there's no big campaign to say he needs to go.
Well,
You follow what
I
I'm
hear
saying?
you saying.
Because, and so then this happens, and then, something else happens, and these people are just bombarded, and they got to go. And I'm
Right.
not saying that he doesn't have to go.
Right.
But what is the thing? Because now we have a president that said he grabbed somebody by the,
Oh my
and,
God.
and just all these crazy things that he's said and done.
Well, it's also well documented that his father was a member of the
No
Klan.
doubt.
Okay?
Exactly.
So when he goes and he sees people in the Klan and Nazis and refers to them as very fine people, that comes from a very authentic place for
Right.
him.
Exactly.
We need to recognize that.
Yes, exactly.
So what you are what you're alluding to here is the difference between how the Democratic Party reacts to those racists
Yes.
when they're outed in their midst, as opposed to how the Republican Party reacts to their racists in their midst. And I would believe it's the difference. Obviously, is night and day.
It is.
But I also believe that this administration's the clock is ticking. Okay,
Yes.
their time is quickly expiring. I would not be surprised if Don Jr. ends up indicted in the very near future,
Okay.
like really close, like maybe a week or two. That's just a little
Okay.
scoop.
All right. But
And then the one that they're looking to encircle. See, there is a question about whether or not the president of the United States can be indicted. So I think what they're trying to do legally, just strategically,
Right.
is that they are looking to
That's gonna
get
be in
all
my
the people
rewritten.
around him. Exactly, they're trying to get to people close to him.
Yes.
particularly
Yeah,
family members.
family members,
right?
exactly.
And I think what they're looking to do to him is very similar to what they did to Spiro Agnew back in the day,
yeah.
where or even basically they're trying to threaten him and make a deal with him to resign,
Yes.
for him to be able to save his children from jail time.
Okay.
I believe that's their
that's
strategy.
interesting. What an interesting strategy.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's just a lot,
Yeah.
right? And so you're talking about, he has to go.
Yeah.
And that is why it's important to have people that's close to you, right? That know what they're doing, because he should have been vetted.
Oh my God.
And so somebody knew that this existed. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, somebody has something out for him.
Yeah.
What is he getting ready to pass in legislation?
I can tell you
that,
right now.
That now, all of a sudden, after all these years, now it's public record.
Yeah, I can tell you right now what happened. I haven't read into all the details around it, but there was a controversy around a new abortion bill.
Okay.
That was coming up, and I think when that dropped, this came out. So it was very close timing, but so. Yeah, he should have been vetted, but he should have acknowledged that. But here's the reality: because you went to Virginia State, you
Right.
spent that time in
I
Virginia.
did,
I'm a Virginia
yes.
native. I've lived in Virginia all my life. The reality is, what they showed in that picture is not abnormal.
Right.
It's not abnormal.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
That's just so. I would. A lot of these other people in the whole in the legislature who are talking about him, I wouldn't be surprised if you dug a little bit deeper
Right.
on both sides.
On
of the
both
aisle.
sides, exactly
You're going
right.
to find stuff like that, because that, unfortunately, is Virginia. It's still home to the capital of the Confederacy. They
Correct.
still worship that history.
Right.
They still have Monument Avenue in Richmond, where they
That's
have
right.
all of these, monuments to all these traitors who fought against the Union in the Civil War.
Right.
They still honor General Lee
Yeah.
every year around
Yes.
MLK weekend. This is still
Yes.
the white supremacy is deeply rooted in that state.
Oh, no doubt about
and
it.
that's another reason why he has got to go, because what he's done is he has sort of just irritated this wound that has refused to heal, and we need to get him out to start moving forward in that process. But we have a whole lot more to do than just getting him out.
Right. So two things. I saw in the news, I think it was yesterday, that the lieutenant governor
Yes.
of Virginia, I think his last name is Fairfax, African American, that he set out when they recognize Lead Day.
That's the second year in a row that he's done that.
So kudos to him for taking a stance.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, and I think this is powerful, there's a lot of talk around what type of candidate in terms of how they're going to show up we need to have on the Democratic side, because we know the Republicans, they hold firm.
Yeah.
They have a system in place and they are ruthless.
Yeah.
Right. And so people are like,
They're
well,
very
we need,
disciplined.
and so we need some people, on the Democratic side of the house to be the same. And I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
Do we need to go eye for eye? I just don't know. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, you're all right in that the Republicans, they are very disciplined. They fall in line. They are the true ride or dies.
Yes,
okay.
They are.
They are riding and dying.
Yes.
They are riding, and they will literally die with this fool, but they are riding, okay? So they are very, very disciplined. The Democratic Party on the other side, it's not like that.
No.
But here's
not
the
ride
thing.
or die.
They're not
ride or die.
But although Nancy was like
Now,
gangsta,
Nancy, the honey.
I have to say,
Yeah, I was impressed.
she was gangsta.
Yeah, she was.
And she kept them in order. I was
Yes,
surprised
I
she was
was
able to
impressed.
keep them together that long.
Yes.
Because normally Democrats punk out,
Yeah.
but she was able to keep them together. So kudos to Nancy with
Yes.
that. But but here's the difference, though. The major difference is the Republican Party is so homogeneous.
Yes, they are.
It's a lot easier.
Yes, it is.
I mean, as you mentioned, there were 100 women who were just elected to this new Congress. And all of the new women that were elected, only 4 were Republican.
Right.
So it is a very white and very male political party.
Yes.
They are very, very homogeneous.
Yes.
And so they have very common interests.
Yes, they do.
And because of that, it's a lot easier for them to stay united. And with the Democratic Party, it's a lot more diverse, and people have different, my interests are going to be a little bit different from the Asian community or the Latino community or the women's community, that's white women community, for example. So we have all these other things that are going on. And so our politics is really built around coalition building.
It is.
Which is a little bit more complicated.
It is. And it is complicated for people to understand.
Yeah.
And, there's a trust factor, too.
Yeah.
I believe there's a trust factor. I mentioned this last week on the show. My husband and I were walking somewhere recently, and a young black male in this group walked by, and he was talking loud. And he said, that's why I've never voted. Because no president has ever done anything. You follow what I'm saying? And so if you have that going on, and if you're listening to, because I listen to black radio a lot, and you're listening to people that are calling in who are not trolls.
Right.
These
are real people.
These are real people.
Real black people.
So much emotion.
Yeah.
So much emotion. And that's what I would challenge people.
Yeah.
Take some of the emotion out of it so that we can think clearly.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the main
Yeah.
thing I want people to get that choose not to vote. What I want them to understand is when you sit home, you're still voting.
Yes, exactly.
What you're doing is you are allowing other people to make your decisions for you.
Exactly.
You're allowing other people to vote for you. You're allowing other people's interests to be advanced while you can just get, earn the honor. Guess what? Bingo, your prize is you just get to sit home and complain.
Correct.
Okay?
Exactly.
So, here it is. I am not willing to cede my power to anyone.
No, not
To
anyone.
anyone. And the last thing we need to do as a people is to trust other people with power that we have. I just wish people would think about this a little bit more critically. Yes, there are things that we still need to change. Yes, there are disappointments. But at the end of the day, unless you're in the arena fighting to make that change, what makes you think anything is going to change in the future?
But you know something, Dr. Avis, and that is, I think, how we're going to close this conversation out. What is it that we want, right? I just think we're just all over the place.
That's a good point,
too.
too.
And that's why I talked about strategy.
Yeah.
There has to be a strategy. I mentioned Kamala Harris's policy agenda, and then looking at Cory Booker's policy agenda. He wants to talk about baby bonds, which I thought was very interesting. Criminal justice reform, which we already know that he has been active in.
Absolutely.
And action on climate change. To me, that is all connected, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's to me. But what is it that we want if we're Democrats or from any candidate? What do we think is going to be important? Because what we're supposed to be doing is planning for the future.
Absolutely.
Right? For the people that's coming behind us.
Right.
Right? And so what needs to be in place for all these people who, when we're dead and gone, coming behind us, what do we want to leave for them so that they don't have a mess on their hands?
Absolutely. So a lot of those things that you've mentioned from both of those candidates, I think, are dead on. We definitely need to go in and correct this tax issue right now that this administration put under, because what it will do is it will starve the rest of our ability to do anything else that needs to be done. We need to invest in our people. We need to invest in infrastructure. We need to invest in issues that in industries that will address climate change, but also put people to work while addressing climate change. Because there's a lot in the green jobs industry that could get people good paying jobs.
Exactly.
I mean, those types of things are things that we need to be thinking about. And specifically as, in the African American community too, we still need to move forward further with criminal justice reform. There's been some movement on that, but it's just around federal
not
prisons,
the state.
not the state. We need to do some work around sort of the people who are in jail right now behind marijuana, when there are lots of folks out here becoming millionaires behind marijuana. We need to correct that. I mean, there's so much that we have to do. But the main thing that we have to do to be able to do any of that is to get this fool out of the White House. So we need to stop this foolishness about not voting or expecting some, perfect candidate. Because I tell you, there is no such thing.
No such thing. And like you said earlier, if they dig in any of our backgrounds or anybody else's backgrounds, you're going to find something. Yeah. And so what is that thing, that makes the difference?
Absolutely.
When do you, and we're forgiving culture.
Yeah.
When do you forgive people when they've changed their behavior and move on?
Right.
Right. And thinking about during that time when they made those decisions, what was behind that.
Right.
And so for me, I just think that we really have to do our homework. And one of the things that I'm very concerned about, because I believe what the scientists say.
Yes, I do too.
Is climate change.
Yeah.
And it is not just for the people coming behind us, it's for us right now.
Absolutely.
Because if you've seen the weather the last 2 weeks, that's all you have to do is look around.
Yep.
Places like Chicago, here, you go from 20 degrees, 10 degrees to 50 degrees in a day.
Yeah.
Something is going on in the atmosphere, in our world, and the scientists are very clear.
Yeah.
They've come together and they said, listen, human beings, if you don't get yourselves together, within 12 years, you're going to have a problem that you can't survive.
Absolutely.
Because the earth has always been here. The earth is going to replenish itself, but it's going to do some things to get us out of the way so it can replenish itself.
There you go.
And so to me, that is an important conversation.
Absolutely.
And we know what's behind it in terms of why people don't want to talk about it. It's just too much money connected to it. Just like diseases, it's too much money connected to it. But it's some things that we have to come together collectively to say, okay, we can ride with that is an important thing.
Absolutely. We definitely have to do that.
Yes.
No doubt about it.
And so, time goes by, Sherelle and I, we try to take breaks, but, the hour goes by so quick. And with our fabulous guest here, that's just how it went today. But what we're asking you all to do is please do your homework.
Absolutely.
And I'm not insulting anybody's intelligence as if to say that you don't do your homework. But if you know some people who are out here in your family and your circle that say that they don't vote, sit them down and have a conversation with them and give them some facts, some data, to see if it would sway them to make a different type of decision. Because whether they vote or not, all decisions are going to impact them.
Absolutely.
And so before we close out, what I would like to do is have Dr. Avis to really tell us about her phenomenal event that I'm planning to go to. That's coming up in May
3rd.
Yes.
Yep.
So talk about it.
Absolutely. So May 3rd through 5th, I'll be having my second annual Master of the Media Summit. Summit. Super excited
Yes.
about that. It's an opportunity for people to really be able to come and get information about how to get their ideas out into the world in a bold and powerful way using traditional media. So using things like television, like radio, like
Yes.
podcasts. And so it's really a space where we attract entrepreneurs, we attract individuals who are career professionals that want to move up in their industry,
Yes.
and individuals who are social justice activists and just want to get their message out in the world. So they can go to masterthemediasummit.com, get more information, and grab your tickets.
Yes. And let me slow it down for you. And it's on the screen. masterthemediasummit.com.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Yes. And so before we close out, and I always have to promote my conference, the 4th annual Woman Thou Art Great Women Sharpening Women Conference. And the theme is unapologetically great. And I slowed down on advertising the conference because I wanted to be sensitive to the women who attend my conference who were furloughed. And so now I'm starting to re-advertise, and I offer the early bird special to make sure that we can catch some of the ladies who otherwise weren't able to get their tickets that early. And so you already know that you can go to eventbrite.com and get your tickets. And so as we close out, how can they reach you, Avis?
Absolutely. So they can go to avisjonesdweaver.com, and probably one place that'll be easy for you to remember is blackwomenlead.com, and you can get me at both of those places.
Okay. And other than the conference, what's next for you?
What's next for me? Oh, well,
Yes.
see, I'll be a couple of things. I'll be heading to a couple of conferences. I'm doing Power Rising. I'm doing South by Southwest, and I'll be heading out of the country in March, going to Tanzania this time and do a lot of work in Africa around women's empowerment.
Oh, that is so amazing. So you all see why I had this phenomenal woman on my show. Thank you so much for saying yes.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing what you know and just being a voice in the community for us. And those of you that don't know her, now you know her. So we'll ask you to follow her and to support any of her activities and events that she has going on. And before we close out, just thank you all. This was a hard day for me.
I know.
And I know that my grandfather lived a long, great life. And I can honestly say when I saw him last month, he was still trying to joke. Although it was a little garbled. And the only thing I could do was kiss him, right?
Aw.
Kiss, and hug them. And so that's just a lesson for us all. Let's love on each other, everybody. Let's love on our family members. Forgive people. Just let it go, because life can be short, right?
Absolutely.
And although, I had him I'm 55 years in my life. For him to be gone, I just did not know that I would have the reaction that I had when I think about, because you always start thinking about, just a relationship and what that person meant to you. And so
But know that he is super proud of you.
oh, no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because he told me. I already know.
Love
And
it.
it's just a long history, right?
Absolutely.
And so thank you again. And thank you all for tuning in. And we'll hopefully, if I'm not in Chicago, we'll be back next Sunday for our next topic. And hopefully Sherelle will be back. Bless you all and have a great afternoon. And I don't know who you're rooting for this afternoon for the Super Bowl, but whoever, I hope they win.
Unless it's the Patriots.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a blessed afternoon.
Bye.